All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher, joined by the whale capper Drew Dinsick. Today we're going to talk Monday Night Football, a pretty miserable game that deserved a spot on Thursday Night Football, but we'll break it down all the same. We're going to talk Coach of the Year, where there's one name in particular to me that I think is a lot of value. Then we're going to look at our two favorite look-aheads for the week upcoming in the NFL. But Drew, how are you, mate? And what did you make of the game last night?
Well, Halloween night was a ton of fun outside of that result. That was very painful. Now, I didn't stake very much on the Bengals, and I didn't stake very much on the over there. But this was one of those games where I lost every prop I played. I lost my second half bet. It was like I doing the math afterwards, like how could this have happened? And then even beyond that, a ton of equity lost in any kind of super prices I scooped on Bengals when they were looking poor at the beginning of the season to win the AFC North. All that equity is evaporated. So this was as bad a single game result as I've had throughout the season so far. And, considering where we are in the season and the fact that this is kind of a pivot point, it's got me a little bit uneven, I'm a little concerned. Like I need to be playing a little bit better defense on some of my positions here because I certainly did not see that coming. That Browns defense looked like the freaking 85 Bears. I mean, with Jadeveon Clowney back, and with Myles Garrett playing some very inspired football, they were wreaking havoc throughout that game. And I want to hang some of that put some of that on the shoulders of Zach Taylor, who I thought had a miserable game plan. But certainly some of the questions and concerns about being able to push around the Browns front and get your running game going were a complete non-factor for the Bengals in this contest. And then on the flip side of the ball, Bengals defense really didn't show up in this one. Left a lot of room for Amari Cooper to do damage down the field, and then just couldn't get off the field in key third down situations. Turnover battle went directly in favor of the Browns. It was basically everything broke in their favor here. And, this opens up, it doesn't open up anything. This basically tilts the AFC North in favor of the Ravens to a degree that is going to be tough to overcome for Cincy.
Yeah, I think the story of the game is Cleveland's defense, which just hadn't shown up all season, and it never really made sense because they have a lot of talent on that side of the ball. I guess Jadeveon Clowney and pairing him with a now healthy and dominant again Myles Garrett was all that they needed. But and that was the story because their secondary hasn't been great this year, Cleveland, but they're going to be put under a lot less pressure when Myles Garrett is getting to Joe Burrow in under 2 seconds, which is absurd. The Browns they own the Bengals, apparently. Kevin Stefanski, 5-0 versus the Bengals as Browns head coach. They've won 5 in a row against Cincy and 8 of the last 9. Wow. But let's talk about Cleveland, because all season I've wanted to get involved in Cleveland, like with the real upside plays, to win the Super Bowl, to win the AFC. Sure. Because they have so much upside, they have so much talent, and they have Deshaun Watson coming back, who knows what he's going to look like. But the last time that we saw him, he was playing like a top 5 quarterback in the NFL and leading the league in passing yards with not that much around him outside of DeAndre Hopkins. So, do you believe in the Browns as a team with upside? If they can, now they're 3-5. They're back into their schedule, which we thought was going to be really difficult. Now all of a sudden doesn't look as difficult because teams like Tampa Bay who are coming up aren't as intimidating. So what do you make of the Browns and their upside?
Yeah, I can't deny anyone's upside in today's NFL. That's the world we're in right now. AFC is a little tougher to find, to find your way home because you do have the Bills and the Chiefs who are capable of scoring 30 every time they roll out there. And I think that's where it comes down to trying to do a critical evaluation of what are the Browns going to be able to give you in a playoff environment, right? That's what you're betting into. Is just like you laid it out. You're not betting into make the playoffs or a current win total market or something like that. You're trying to hit high upside here, and in a playoff setting, they're almost certainly going to have to go on the road. This is a team that's only getting into the playoffs if they get in via wild card. And can they win 3 consecutive road games? 2 of those presumably in Kansas City and Buffalo. The defense is not good enough to keep those teams under 30, which means the offense has to get you to 30 plus, or you have to have just some variance and have the ball last kind of situations. Special teams is a little bit of a concern. Don't love their kicker. And certainly the fact that the weapons on offense are very lean after Amari Cooper is a problem for me. So I think ultimately, this team, I think their ceiling is probably round 2 of the playoffs. But at that point, getting past the Chiefs or the Bills is not happening, especially if they have to go on the road at the Bills coming off of a bye, or Chiefs off of a bye. Bills haven't sewn anything up yet. So, definitely that's kind of where it stops for me. And I can't really see them being able to outscore those other two teams. Do you think they have enough upside defensively to keep the Chiefs or the Bills under 30?
I didn't think they did until last night, and seeing what their defensive line did last night, I think has to change how you calibrate what the upside of that defense is. But the big thing for them is getting in, because that's no guarantee at all. They're 3-5, but look, I do think it's good that they play Miami next week, because that's one of the teams who they're going to be competing with for a wild card. So when you're the underdog, you want these high variance games, and you want these high leverage games. So that's good for them. Also, the Jets are 5-3 and in the 5th. In the number 1 wild card spot at the moment. I think they have huge drop-off potential because of what Zach Wilson showed. The Patriots at 4-4 with how Mac Jones has been playing, I think they're very vulnerable. The Chargers, who we're going to get into, I think they're probably the most solid wild card team, but still you don't feel amazing about that. So I do think they have a pathway in. Their schedule as well, as when Deshaun Watson comes back, their schedule goes at Houston, at Cincinnati, who apparently they own, home to Baltimore, where if Deshaun is coming back and looking like Deshaun, they'll probably be favored in that game. Then New Orleans, at Commanders, at Steelers. Like, that's very navigable, if that's a word. So I do think that Cleveland, they do have a shot. And then you're just hoping that you only have to beat one of Buffalo or Kansas City, and that another team takes care of the other one. But I don't know. Some of these, like right now, they're 35-1 to win the AFC on PointsBet. Probably need a little bit higher than that, just because they're still a dog to make the playoffs. But I don't know. They're definitely a team to monitor. And if they beat Miami next week and get the tiebreak over Miami and are 1 game behind the Dolphins, then all of a sudden I think that you have to pounce if some books are asleep at the wheel with the AFC price in particular. But let's jump into Coach of the Year, which is always one of the most interesting markets to think about, and I think one of the best markets to bet into, because it's always so vulnerable. It's very difficult. There's no model. There's no amazing liquidity like that goes into NFL spreads in NFL Coach of the Year futures markets. These markets can absolutely be beaten. I know, because I priced them myself at PointsBet, and it's really just me talking to like 2 other guys and then coming up with what we think are the prices. And I'll back myself in to price it pretty well, but it's not like there's a great science going into this. But I'll just run through the market at the moment. Nick Sirianni is rightfully the favorite, but he's -115, which is very short, and I don't agree with. Brian Daboll is +400, second favorite even after that loss to the Seahawks. Kevin O'Connell +800, Pete Carroll +1300, Robert Saleh, who was looking in very good position for this award before injury started to strike and Zach Wilson started to strike. He's next to +1400. I don't believe in Mike Daniel, who's after him. And then Sean McDermott rounds out, I guess, that second tier, and he's +1700. Who do you like in this market?
Okay. I kind of need to set the table here and get your guidance, because I have a huge stake on Sirianni at some big numbers. And I agree with your general concept that he is very vulnerable at the top of this market. The Eagles have virtually no room for error. It is, you know what one of the hardest things to do is in this market? Go wire to wire. Like, the idea that you are going to kind of be as good as you were early in the season all the way through the end, finish with some, regular season with some fireworks, really kind of, put an exclamation point on a campaign. Like, it's a very, 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 very small margin. The Eagles are your last undefeated team. They are, positioned well to get the 1 seed. But you look specifically at the let's assume that they end up splitting with the Cowboys, which is completely rational. They go at Dallas December 24th. They don't match up especially well against Dallas with a healthy Dak Prescott. So, we got 1 loss there. And then, of the rest of their schedule, I can see my median expectation is that they finish here 7-3. That would be a 14-3 record. And presumably you get the 1 seed at 14-3, but it's not a guarantee. Vikings could end up at 15-2 surely, or you could end up losing the NFC East to the Cowboys if you lose one additional game. So at that point, if you're not winning your division, which is not a guarantee because the Cowboys are good, you do not have a chance to win this award. None. Right. So the Eagles right away, there is a big old gaping hole where if they ultimately slip up and lose this division, he is out of the running period. And at that point, Mike McCarthy is certainly in the discussion, particularly because he navigated the water with Cooper Rush and won a bunch of games early in the season. So if they peak later in the season and they are looking superlative and they beat the Eagles on Christmas Eve when everyone's watching, he's definitely going to be launched into the discussion. But for, at the end of the day, the coach of the year market then tends to go to the biggest surprise, the team that overachieved more than anyone thought was going to be able to. And that's why guys like Brian Dable are in the discussion. That's why Pete Carroll and Robert Saleh are on the board here. I just am not seeing an obvious, guy that the narrative can be built around that, he has done something incredible. Who is your guy that fits that narrative?
Yeah, well, firstly on Sirianni, I think he is rightfully the favorite, even though he shouldn't be this short, just because the Eagles, they have such a high floor at this point. But this award, it skews so much to recency. The market was flipping around so violently. I think in the last 3 weeks of the season, there was 3 different favorites for this award last year, where I think it went LaFleur, Taylor, and then Vrabel at the end, who just kind of won it at the last. So I do think with Sirianni that, if they close 7-3, they're not going to be viewed necessarily as a 14-3 team for the purposes of this award. They're going to be viewed as a 7-3 team, which isn't as compelling a case. Dable, I think the loss really hurts him against the Seahawks. Now the Giants. I did think that Dable was the bet last week, just because if they went 11-6, I think that's close to auto win for Dable, just given the expectations of that team, given that he's playing in the New York market or coaching in the New York market, and then also the fact that you can just easily point to his coaching because of the lack of talent on the roster. And that's the key thing, and the thing that might hurt Sirianni is that he has a team of superstars. They traded for A.J. Brown. They have all this talent on defense. Hurts is looked as an MVP candidate at the moment, and so I think that he probably has to go 15-2 to win this award, and that's by no means guaranteed, though very much in play. So as I look through the other names on this list, the one that I think is the most value at the moment is Pete Carroll at plus 1,300. And just thinking about it like this, they're plus 350 to win the division. Is Pete Carroll better than like a 30% chance to win Coach of the Year if they win the NFC West, if they beat out the Niners? To me, he absolutely is. I would think that he's better than a coin flip at that point if they win the division. This team's win total is 5.5. Yes, Geno Smith is going to get a lot of the credit, but also Pete Carroll's going to get a ton of the credit. So I think that, especially with the narrative of Russell Wilson leaving and them getting better without him, I think Carroll is the best bet at the moment. I would make him plus 550. I'd have him slightly behind Dable and Sirianni, but he would be third favorite for me. Just quickly to cycle through some other names. Mike McDaniel's done. He's not going to win this award, just with everything swirling around that team. Robert Saleh, I think, is going to struggle with how Wilson has looked. I think Sean McDermott is vaguely in play at plus 1,700 if they can go, again, 15-2 and have the best record, and there's just no other standout candidate. I would make him slightly short on that true price. But the one name I wanted to ask you about, who was staring at his odds a little bit last night, Mike Vrabel is 80-1, and I know he won last year, and I know that I can't recall anyone going back-to-back, but this team has such little talent. They're like 13-point underdogs this week to the Chiefs. They were 11-point underdogs to the Bills in week 2. They were home dogs to the Las Vegas, and then ended up winning that game. This team has such a talent deficit. If they can end up going, again, like 12-5, 13-4 somehow, which I don't think is an 80-1 outcome, then doesn't Vrabel have to be considered? He had the viral clip, the NFL Films thing, where he hugs the offensive lineman. It just seems like his coaching is very easy to point to in ways that perhaps it isn't with Sirianni. But is Mike Vrabel worth a flyer at 80-1?
Man, it's a big number, and he's dancing right around there with the top seeds in the AFC right now, and the AFC South is awful. So. I think there's, again, if you're defending in position, is it worth taking a flyer on Vrabel? Absolutely. At the end of the day, getting past the Bills and the Chiefs would be impressive. But the big surprise is going to be whoever lands at the top of the NFC, because it's not going to be the Bucks, it's not going to be the Rams, it's not going to be the Packers, right? So somebody is going to finish at the top of the pile in the NFC, and I think that's going to be presumed to be sort of the big overachieving, big surprise team that we got to give this consideration to Coach of the Year. And I think if you can figure out who that team is, then that's then that's the bet. And obviously, it looks like the Eagles right now, which is why Sirianni is the favorite. And you make some good points, like he's doing it with superstars. If there was a big kind of huge GM or like front office award, like that would be maybe more appropriate for kind of recognizing the Eagles' success. If there was a most improved player award, it would go to Hurts, and that would be sort of their ability to kind of pat the Eagles on the back for a great season. But because there's no other obvious award to be given out to an Eagle, I think Sirianni by default is going to be the selection, because I think the voters in general, if the Eagles get the 1 seed, are going to have a tough time putting no Eagle voted, right? They're going to have to fill in something to reward the Eagles, and ultimately Sirianni being that guy is the award. I like your Carroll take. I'm concerned about Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings stealing the 1 seed. Brian Dable, surely also a very viable candidate, but this, in my opinion, this is going to go to someone in the NFC.
Yep. I just think with Kevin O'Connell, like he's a game behind of the Eagles, and the Eagles have the tiebreak over them, and he's not going to win unless he finishes ahead of Sirianni, which I think is a pretty significant dog at this point. All right. Also, just a quick note from our researcher, Johnny Venezia, that Joe Gibbs is the last back-to-back winner, 82-83 for Coach of the Year. All right, before we get into your favorite look, Drew, coming up, please download the RotoWorld app to receive breaking player news all season long. Stay ahead of the competition by favoriting players on your roster. Get the latest injury updates, player news, and much more delivered right to your phone. It's available in the App Store today. Okay, so your favorite look, Drew, is in the Chargers-Falcons game. The line is 3. Chargers favorite on the road. Total is 48.5. What do you like here?
Yeah, so again, not firing from an especially confident place, considering what happened to me last night. But
a little unhinged today, Drew.
I am. I haven't had many like just bloodbath losing days, and I definitely not this season in the NFL. It's been a while, so it's it takes a little bit of an adjustment here. But yes, I like the Chargers. I laid the 3. It's out to -116 at some of the market makers. That's going to go to 3.5 in my opinion. The injury news doesn't seem to be breaking especially positively. So this isn't even kind of bank shotting that we're going to get good injury news for the Chargers, and that the injuries are going to break against the Falcons here. But you have an elite quarterback going up against a very, very, very poor defense, particularly a weak secondary. Casey Hayward is certainly not going to play. AJ Terrell may not play. And now you get even with a second tier squad, your backups out there running one wide receiver for the Chargers. This is still Herbert coming off of extended rest with just an ability to absolutely go and score in bunches. It is not a great matchup for the Chargers defense against Atlanta, who loves to do all of these, efficient running attack, and their running defense is a huge suspicious problem. And that's why this is a 3-point line right now. I think if people had any higher confidence in the Chargers run defense, this would be in the 4.5 range. But I think the Chargers can play from ahead here. I think they can put the Falcons in a little bit of a tighter spot. And even so, still, this is Chargers coming off extra rest, having an extra week to really do some serious self-evaluation and some improvement, I think is a real likelihood here. And you have Herbert coming off of, again, another week to heal from that rib injury. So expecting 100% Herbert, expecting the Chargers to make a little bit of a run here in this next stretch of their schedule. And it starts with a convincing win against the Falcons for me.
Yeah, this kind of reminds me of the Chargers-Texans line a few weeks ago when the Chargers were at one point only 4.5-point favorites to Houston on the road, where it just doesn't feel right that Justin Herbert was only a 4.5-point favorite over Davis Mills, and now he's only a 3-point favorite over a very shaky Marcus Mariota. So yeah, I would be with you on the Chargers. I'd be a little bit concerned that Keenan Allen didn't practice yesterday, coming off of the bye, which is a concern. Mike Williams will definitely be out. So that would be the worry. But I do think that this Chargers offensive line is starting to look a little bit better. They're getting a bit more continuity now that they've adjusted to Rashawn Slater being out. They'll be able to game plan with JC Jackson being out, having that week off. The Falcons coming off the overtime game against Carolina. You would expect, all the rest, the tactical advantages should all be with the Chargers, and they have the significant advantage at quarterback. And then this is it for the Chargers. I mean, if they start losing these type of games, then if you haven't already, you can pretty much write them off as a threat in the AFC. All right. Before we get into Seahawks Cardinals, which was a minus 1,000 shot to be talked about today, it's one of our favorite books, given how we feel about one of those teams, or really how we feel about both of those teams in different directions. First, a reminder that it's a weekend of must-watch events on NBC and Peacock. It all begins with the Horses and Breeders' Cup, Saturday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, followed by the Clemson Tigers taking on Notre Dame football in South Bend, and capped off with Saturday Night Live. The action continues Sunday with the NASCAR Cup Series Championship at 3 p.m. and wraps up with the Titans battling the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football starting at 7 p.m., all of it on NBC and Peacock. Now, our Seahawks haven't seen much primetime action, but they should the rest of the way based on how they're playing. And that is my favorite look at the moment. Plus 1.5 at the Arizona Cardinals. The total is a massive 50 flat. But I like the Seahawks in this spot. Just think they're a significantly better team than the Cardinals at the moment. The Seahawks are up to 6th in DVOA. The Cardinals are 30th in DVOA. The Seahawks are 11th in overall PFF grade. The Cardinals are 30th in PFF grade. As someone who was riding a Cardinals plus 6.5 ticket against the Vikings, close 3.5 didn't matter because that team is an absolute disgrace in the way that they are managed, the way that they operate. It's just a complete mess. There is no rhythm at all. Yes, DeAndre Hopkins looks phenomenal and is looking like the guy that he was in Houston. I don't know what the hell happened to DeAndre Hopkins last year because he didn't look anything like that. That is scary, but I just don't trust this Arizona team at all. And I think that the Seahawks, I mean, they're just legitimately good. We're halfway through the season and Geno Smith is the second highest rated quarterback by PFF. He's 5th in DVOA. He's top 5 in passer rating, leads the league in completion percentage. The defense has been a lot better than expected. I didn't see a ceiling for this defense where they could keep Arizona to 9 points, where they could keep the Giants to 13 points. I think that we're seeing with Tariq Woolen making that secondary a lot better. The pass rush isn't amazing, but has been functional enough. So I just think it adds up to, I just think the Seahawks are better neutral field than the Cardinals. This line is implying that they're basically even. I don't agree with that at all. I just think the Seahawks are better. I would have the Seahawks favored in this game. Where do you stand?
Well, I agree. I think last week was kind of a key pivot point for the Cardinals seasonally, right? Like if they win that game, you get to 4-4, and all of a sudden, like, you still have a chance at a wild card. You still have a chance at the division. You're building a little bit of momentum with 2 straight wins against top quality opponents. But the way that they lost, not just that they lost, but the way that they lost with Kyler Murray making, kind of the key turnovers at the end of the game and some of the body language that's going on between him and the coach, it spells quit. And I think realistically, Kyler Murray is sort of the only immovable piece of this franchise that needs to be significantly shaken up. And if you see a quiet mutiny where he all of a sudden is not interested in running and putting his body at risk, and he's not interested in having, helping Cliff Kingsbury maintain his position as the head coach of this team, it would not surprise me. So there are a couple of X factors where I see a long tail to Arizona underachieving, not just in this game, but for a little bit of a sustained time here as they sort of pack it up on the season.
Yeah, I would even start looking at some alternate lines, like Seahawks to win by double digits, that type of thing, because the Cardinals have huge disaster potential. And the Seahawks team, I mean, they're coming off 3 2-score wins in a row, and it's not like they're beating up on the Texans and the Lions. Like they blew out the Giants, they blew out the Chargers in Los Angeles, and then they blew out these Arizona Cardinals as well. So I think we just have to readjust the Seahawks and expect that they are, projecting forward, if the season started today, that they are a 9-8, 10-7 type level team. And this Cardinals team is more like the flip side of that, where they're a 7-10 type of team. And the Seahawks, they were 2.5-point dogs at home to the Cardinals 3 weeks ago. You love that line. I love that line. Seahawks did it with ease that day. And I I think they might do it with ease again as underdogs against the Cardinals. Just a lot of good vibes around the Seahawks at the moment. Tyler Lockett in the press conference afterwards with the great slaying of Russell Wilson, talking about what we can achieve when no one cares who takes the credit. No good vibes around the Arizona Cardinals. They have been a mess against the spread and also straight up, but basically in the Cliff Kingsbury era at home in particular. All right, Drew, we're done. Don't forget to check out NBCSportsEdge.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks for everyone watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. Drew, you got something for me? Lastly, give a quick question.
Yeah, the Seahawks, after this game, let's assume they're 6-3. They head to Munich to take on the mighty Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What kind of line are we going to see on a neutral between Geno Smith and Tom Brady?
Jeez, Bucks will be favored because America and Germany still don't believe in the Seahawks like they should. But I don't know. Is that line going to be like 2?
2.5, yeah.
2.5, yeah. I think Dante, I'd say Bucks minus 2.5, and I like the Seahawks in that spot.
Yeah, I just do.
Okay, go Seahawks. Go load up on the look ahead. All right, thanks everyone watching, and if you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to subscribe and rate us. From Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick, we'll see you tomorrow.